Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
We got a very normal show today.
Yeah.
We don't have an audience. We don't have a guest. It's just three guys in the studio just chilling out.
It's probably a good thing because
Yeah.
I am just literally just trying to plug along.
You making it all right?
Yeah, Stoney. I mean, how you feeling?
This is just, I can't even put the headphone on both ears.
Mm.
And even night before last, I was moving and I got out of the bed and I crashed into the bookcase because I have no balance. And I just can't believe that is not, they have no timeline for that. But, here we are, couple 2 months past the accident, and I'm still falling and still.
Gosh, that's scary.
I crashed, almost knocked the whole bookcase over.
Damn.
And I don't understand this. I'm used to being able to heal. I'm used to being able to do things, and
right.
Watching the bureaucracy of this go through and how things are done with workman's comp is kind of kooky. Because it's not just going to go get it done. You have to get approvals, then you have to have the doctors have to recommend people, and there's another word for that, but I can't think of the word I want to use for it. But
Specialist?
Well, it's a specialist, but they have to nominate or what's the word I want to use? I don't give a shit. I don't know. Whatever the damn word is, I can't remember it. And then that has to be approved, and then you make the appointment.
I see.
And
a lot of red tape.
Lots of bureaucracy and red tape,
Jeez.
and
just to get some help.
Work is doing what they can for me. This is the insurance company that is representative of the workman's comp arena, and
insurance companies not helping. Oh, not
right?
Can't be. Right. Or making it harder on you. Yeah, that's sounds about right.
And then on top of that, you have the stress of all of this. The workman's comp only pays a portion of your salary.
Right.
And so, how do I take care of my family?
Right.
Right.
It's a very valid question.
This is an accident that wasn't my fault. I had nothing to do with this other than taking, the fall.
Yeah, you should not be felt like you're the victim, like you're somehow it's somehow your fault for all this stuff. Right. I mean, I don't know. Workman's comp, I don't really know much about workman's comp. I mean, I really don't know how all that works.
Right.
I mean, I do know that, there's investigations and all that stuff. Because, they got to look at it from a broad standpoint,
right.
Because when you're
and you know what, and I know there's a lot of people that take advantage of this.
Mm-hmm. That was what I was going to say. I could see potentially like trying to look at it from a cautious perspective, but in your situation, especially having evidence and having
your event is very well documented. There is no anything left to the imagination on this one.
Right. And that's what makes it hard. Is like I can understand with some vague cases, it would be hard to it would be easy to draw it out.
And then it's me.
Right.
There's people that would ride this out for years and not worry about it.
You want to be well and get back to work.
I want to go back to work. I have a dream job. I work for an organization that is amazing. The people are amazing. I work with some of the greatest men and women on the planet. The leadership of this organization is amazing, and I want to go back and be in the fold. I want to go back and be there. Sitting on my ass doing nothing is not me.
Right.
No, that's
not
living. I mean,
right.
It's not. It's not. And then on top of that, I'm deaf in one ear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's never going to change because the cochlea and one of the ballast tubes is gone. The longest fracture of the skull destroyed that. And the ballast tube is what's creating this balance problem for me. And that's just never going to, it can't heal, But supposedly, and they don't have a time frame, 3 months to 18 months or more or longer, this could be a lifelong event, that my body may adjust to not having it. So when you're a little baby learning how to walk, supposedly you have hearing, vision, 3 ballast tubes in each ear, total of 6. And the baby's learning how to walk. And it's funny watching a baby learn how to walk until you're 60 years old trying to learn how to walk again. Right. I'll never laugh at another baby walking again, learning how to walk. Because you kind of understand what they don't know that they're going through. And it's frustrating. And then on top of that, I don't know what crap. Ocular nerve, or there's some nerve that's
olfactory.
in that olfactory nerve. Thank you. For my sense of smell, which is 75% of your sense of taste.
Yeah.
So now I can't taste anything. Y'all know me. I cook.
Yeah.
I love to cook. And now I can enjoy food. I'm literally eating for function. And this is a miserable experience for me. Miranda will cook this great dinner and go, how was it? I can't taste it.
I don't know.
And I feel so bad. Oh, the texture was great. But then all of a sudden there's this.
Food is all about the taste.
It's about the taste. Now,
that's why
every quarter of the time I taste something in my mouth, it tastes like burnt sulfur, burnt metal. And it's the same thing in the smell, no matter what it is. It tastes, it's just it's a horrible existence. I hate this. Now the in-home care is over.
Okay, that ended.
So then all of a sudden we're trying to go where it has to be outpatient therapy, and that is physical therapy and speech and memory therapy, because my memory is not the same. I have a hard time recalling words, and Miranda says sometimes I'll use words that I think I think I'm using the correct definition for, but I'll put wrong words in places. And there was one company that we contacted, or they contacted us once the orders come down from the doctor, and they were so rude to Miranda. And I mean horribly rude. Like, well, what's your insurance company? Well, this is not insurance. This is workman's comp. Well, we don't do that. We don't call doctors. We don't do this, blah, blah, blah. And they were just so rude to her. So she hung the phone up. And then we talked to somebody and said, well, let's try this other company. And they've been somewhat nice to Miranda. But then a couple of days later, that former other company calls her back. Like, why haven't you called us? Why haven't you done this? Why? And she said, excuse me, and went click and hung up on them. And I'm going to try to find the owner of that company, and I'm going to let them know what their employees or how they're treating people.
Right.
Because this is me. I don't look for anything.
Yeah.
But I certainly want to tell somebody that you can't treat people like this. I'm the one who can't.
Right. I didn't ask for this.
I didn't ask for this.
I don't want to have to deal with all this. I just want to be able to live my life the way I was living it. Now I'm dealing with all these problems.
And this is the new norm for my life now. And I hate to bore our listeners with all of this.
Everybody
texts me and calls me and wants to know what the update is.
This is our public forum.
Here you go.
So yeah.
And even the last couple of casts that we've done, I listen to them and I go, God, that's not me. I'm not as quick as I was. I'm not as eloquent as I was. And I go, that's just not me. And I just feel like I'm letting y'all down. I'm letting the listeners down.
Definitely not. The thing is, like, there's definitely, like, I'm not sure if I've said it, but like, there definitely is like an understanding from my perspective of, like, obviously you've gone through a whole bunch, even in the past couple of years, with all the stuff you've been going through. It's like, I mean, I'm
trying
like
I make it a yearly event now, doesn't it?
I've made the joke on the show before about making this a regular occurrence. Please don't. But I obviously, I mean, like the first time I saw you with, you had a cane and you looked like you were unwell because I mean, like you were still recovering, and it's like that's understandable, and I hope that someone would extend
fun fact
as much grace.
The cane is only for really extremely short distances.
Okay,
like from the car to the door.
Got it.
If I have to go longer than that, I have this little walker that I have to use. Because even with the cane, and a lot of people, you don't realize this, but the balance is your brain taking all of this information in.
Right.
And I didn't realize this when the physical therapist and I would start walking. We would walk on the sidewalk, or if at the time people were watering their lawns, we'd have to move into the road. Mm-hmm. You don't realize how much visual comes into play, like one or two cars passing by closely throws your balance way off because your brain is obviously trying to work with one less ballast tube. Mm-hmm. So it's trying to suck in all this information and use it to keep your balance. 3 cars going by you and you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Mm-hmm. And you start freaking out.
Yeah.
And it's so tiring because your brain, and they say that if you go deaf or you go blind or something, the other senses take over and try to do more. Right.
But it probably takes time to get
and it takes time to get there. Right. And I can see that. That's what my brain is doing. So after doing the podcast, with you guys, we'll record for, an hour or so. I go pass out. Mm-hmm. I'm so exhausted.
Right.
And it's just, I don't know.
Right.
I'm not complaining. I'm really not complaining, but this is just, it's a life-altering event, and I have to be honest with myself and continue to push forward and try to get better. But this is something. Mm-hmm. This is something.
Well, our prayers are with you, and you got to take as much time as you can to heal, because this is not something that you're going to bounce back quickly. No. I knew, when just seeing what you kind of went through, I said, "No, this is going to be a while." And I believe I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when we was just you and I here, and I said, "It's going to take him a while to get over this, and it's just going to have to be patient. Be patient with your body."
One of the upsides to this is Miranda.
Yeah.
I realize what a gift of God Miranda was to my life, because she is fantastic. She is doing everything she can to take care of me, and it's just amazing to have her in my life, and I just appreciate her.
That's awesome.
Well, you're lucky to have her.
Oh, man, am I.
You are lucky to have her.
People ask me why I don't go get a lottery ticket anymore. I says because I used up all my luck when I got hurt. That was it. There's no sense in me doing it. That's a waste of a couple of dollars.
To kind of specifically date this episode just a little bit, we're recording this on Memorial Day, so it's definitely it feels a little more laid back in here. Yeah. I don't know if it's just
Memorial. You mean
or Labor Day?
Sorry, Labor Day.
Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend. I'm sorry. It's
so
Labor
that
Day
means
weekend.
that this will drop on 9/11, then, doesn't it?
It will.
That date stands out, doesn't it?
Yes.
Right. Was there? I guess before we get into probably what. Talking about 9/11 stuff specifically, is there anything that for Labor Day that you guys did that was? Did you have any family traditions? Did you go out, or did you do like a family vacation stuff?
Talking about in the past?
Yeah.
Well, I think as a kid, I remember if I remember back then, we didn't start school until almost Labor Day, if I recall. It was very at the very end of August. It may have been, you may have returned to school for and then it was a Labor Day holiday.
Yeah.
So
that sounds familiar for me.
Yeah, well. Now they're starting school mid-August.
Right.
But Labor. When I think of Labor Day, I think of the beach and.
Right, that's what I was saying.
It's kind of the last hoorah of summer. It's start of football and all that.
I never really did anything for Labor Day weekend. particularly. So I don't really have anything specific, but I know there are people out there that like barbecuing or, the beach, or like all those things are very like quintessential, like you're saying, like the last hurrah of summer stuff.
So yeah, I mean, technically that's it. It's generally, once you get past this date, now all the kids are kind of firmly in their school schedules.
Routines are back up.
The colleges, everybody's kind of get back into that school routine, and traffic is terrible in the mornings. It's so nice during the summer to be able to leave my house and not be just bogged down with traffic trying to get to work.
And it doesn't help that, like, and again, I really don't mean to make a habit out of this, but around here, the weather has been particularly special, different from what it normally is around here. We've been hitting, but I think the same thing is for like Texas, and I think even some of like Mississippi and stuff, kind of around us, have all felt the same way, where it's like it's been.
We have been getting
hot, dry.
I've said we have been getting Texas heat.
Yeah.
This summer. I mean, it's always been warm in Louisiana in the summer. Right. I mean, it's what it is. But for us to be hitting triple digits on a regular basis, that's somewhat unheard of. Last time I
heard of is this is one of those new record inside of a new record kind of thing. Is I think from what I read, I think it was 29 or 30 days consecutively of record breaking heat. So it's like, it has been, we have been having record breaking heat numbers for going on 29 or 30 days, which is also a record breaking length in and of itself. So it's like a twofold.
Yeah, the funniest thing is I'm right now, I'm looking at my phone, and I got an alert from one of the local news stations.
Yeah.
And it basically says, another run of 100-degree weather possible. So it might be, it looked like we had a bit of a reprieve. Where maybe the high was like 93, 92.
Right.
Which is actually felt pretty good.
Yeah, which again, normally for us is
that would be normal. And then we get those afternoon rain showers that would cool things down
a little bit. Yeah,
but now we're just not getting the rain.
Because the same thing happened for me this time last year. Literally, Memorial Day. I'm sorry, I'm doing it again. Labor Day last year was when Mallory and I went to Disney World, and it was the same thing where it was like high 80s, low 90s for a lot of it. So the fact that we're here, with hundreds, it's like, man, like I'm not saying it's like, oh my, I mean it is, it's pretty crazy, but it's just
so kind of going on the theme of 9/11. Where can y'all remember where you were when all this happened? You want to kind of talk about that a little bit? I know for me, I was actually sick with the flu.
I was in Panama City, Florida.
I think we've mentioned this before.
And
these sound familiar.
I was getting ready. I was pulling up I was snorkeling with a friend of mine, Kim, and her husband, and Chrissy and her husband, and we were down there just having a little vacation, and Kim and I were going to go snorkeling. We found this one little place in Panama City that looked so Jacques Cousteau. It was so clear. You saw all this water, and most everybody was sleeping, and I had the TV on, and apparently the first tower had already been hit.
Wow.
When I flicked the TV on. So I'm pulling it up, and I literally watched the second plane hit.
Yeah.
And I yelled out to everybody, get up. The world just changed. And it was just this devastating chop. And the world literally did change after that.
Yeah.
What were you doing, Ian?
I was, what was that? It was 01. I was 7. And I remember, I don't remember the full story. I just remember the hysteria as a 7-year-old around it, if you know what I mean. I remember, I want to say I was at like a church event or something akin to that, because there was other kids around, and there was a lot of a lot of like the mothers or so my mom and like other kids' moms were also there, like doing like some sort of like extracurricular activity. That's kind of what we did with that church group. I was homeschooled, as you guys have heard from one of the episodes. So like I was in like some extracurricular activities with other homeschools in the area as like a co-op sort of thing. And I want to say it was something like that, where it was, a community activity or something. And the only thing I remember was like I didn't comprehend what was going on, but it felt devastating. It felt important. Mm-hmm. So even as like a 7-year-old, I remember like everyone was kind of like huddled around a TV in like one of like the areas of the church. It was like a lot of the moms or a lot of like the parents were around, like, like, oh my gosh, what's happening? It was kind of like scary. And then I think obviously some of the kids tried to ask what was going on, and then they didn't really give us I obviously didn't really give all the details to a bunch of 7-year-olds. But I remember seeing it though. I remember seeing like, cause again, they probably replayed the clip, a bunch of times. That's it. Like I don't remember a whole lot after that.
At 7 years old, you really can't remember a whole lot.
Right.
You had the flu, right?
Right.
You said you were sick with the flu.
I was in bed and watching the news. I was living in my condo at the time, and I'm laying up in bed. I woke up, and next thing I know is all of a sudden they're showing pictures of New York, and all of a sudden these plane crashing into the
I remember
tower, and it's like
I was in construction at the time. I had left my first previous career, and I had gotten into construction management. And I'm watching the first one burn, and I'm going, I remember they just changed the fire suppression system in there. They had gone through there and changed. How is this thing on fire? This thing, the fire suppression should have taken care of it. And then all of a sudden, that's when I watched the new one.
I'm telling you, think about me. We think about it now. It's in hindsight of what could have happened in addition to the devastation of the towers.
Yeah.
If that plane would have crashed into the White House.
Yep.
I mean, it would have been a coup de grace.
Yeah.
I mean, it really could have been a coup de grace as far as those, kind of an attack. I mean, it really, I kind of look at it as we kind of lost some innocence a little bit, because, we always see these kind of things happen elsewhere. It's the Middle East or whatever.
Well, Israel lives with 10 of these attacks a day.
There's countries that deal with this kind of violence on a mass scale
every day.
It's part of the everyday consciousness of their population. For us, we've never had to deal with that. I mean, it's always we've projected power. We've sent troops. Now, we've had disasters. I mean, think about what happened during the Reagan years with the Beirut, the barracks. Those 200 Marines were killed at that time. So, but it's always things that have happened elsewhere, not on our own soil. And it just has forever changed how we look at things now. I mean, everything. I mean, I would even venture to say the stuff with the current COVID crisis that occurred is it just how all that just changed the way we do things now. I mean, you think about with airlines and
everything.
I mean, everything is just different now. I mean,
TSA didn't
sporting
exist.
Events, everything that you go to now, such heightened security and all the.
There's a
crazy.
poll done,
I mean,
and obviously in 2021 is 20 years later.
Yeah.
Percentage of Americans who say 9/11 has changed America. In 2002, which was a year later, 55% say it changed America for the better, and 27% say it changed America for the worst. Then 10 years from there, in 2011, 39% of Americans say it was for the better, and 42% say it was for the worst.
Wow.
And in 2021, 33% of Americans say 9/11 changed America for the better, and 46% say it changed America for the worst.
Wow.
Because we've seen so many government agencies take advantage of that, and now they're trying to take away your freedoms for the safety of perceived America.
Patriot Act.
The Patriot Act. I was going to go there. I'm glad you went there. And so has it really changed America for the better? I can't say that it has.
I hate to say it, but I think some of the issues we're dealing with now,
absolute power corrupts absolutely.
It stems from the noble intentions of the Patriot Act. I mean, I remember when all that was being debated in Congress, and there were people at that time afraid of what the government could do.
Well, remember the
maybe
big
at
argument
that time
was cell phones. Remember, cell phones were Ian, you talked about, you gave a date when the iPhone first came out.
I think it was 2008 or 9 or something like that, yeah.
So all of a sudden now you get these big phone stuff coming out, and because it's a radio wave, a TV wave, or some kind of a wave, do you have to have what's the little subpoena? What's it? What do you court order? What do you got to get? What's it called to eavesdrop on somebody?
A warrant?
A warrant. Thank you. A warrant. Do you have to have a warrant now to listen to somebody's cell phone? That went up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
This really changed America. The Patriot Act, man, people were delving into things in the so-called security of the nation.
Yeah,
and there's some people that say, some people say that 9/11 was not just some random event.
Well,
and I know you don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I mean, there
right.
are some valid arguments that it wasn't as accidental as what maybe it was portrayed. But
the big thing, again, talking about has it changed for the better? I feel like with a lot of things like this, like catastrophe or something, where everyone bands together and everyone has the real mission at heart. I think it can, and I think it has, or it had. But then once you get further away from that, and then the other people get involved, and and there's we have enough of a time gap between it, and I think that's where things get twisted.
I think the tendency is just right after the event, then the country rallies together. Yeah. For the first time, America has an existential threat. Yeah. Really, okay. I kind of feel like the barbarians are at the gates.
At the gates, yep.
And so that has a way of skewing perceptions.
Yeah.
But now, as time has gone on, the tribalism that's been always there really started manifesting itself, because you have some groups that, kind of want this. You have other groups that don't want this.
Right.
And now, all of a sudden, the existential threat's gone. There's really no threat to the United States. And lo and behold, we've got the mess that we're in right now. So
the crazy thing, to go back to a little bit of my story, I may not have a very great working knowledge of the day of, but I remember sometime, I don't remember exactly when, but I remember sometime after the events took place. Obviously, it was everywhere. Everyone heard about it. You saw it on the television. You saw it in the papers. That was it was very present. And I may not remember everything about being 7 years old, but there are obviously these core memories that stick out of big things that happen, vacations or little things like this. And for some reason, this one stuck out because I got in trouble. What is it called whenever you get in trouble? I was an accomplice. I was an accomplice to something happening, basically, and I felt like I didn't fully understand what was happening. There was a kid we were playing Legos together, and he had built the big Legos up as a tower, or I think I may have built a tower or whatever, and then he had made a plane, and he was like, oh look, and he hit it to break it, and he's like, look, it's what's happening on the news or whatever. It's like the Twin Towers, or he said something about it, and and the parent or the guardian that was watching over us had like pulled us aside, and I didn't understand what was happening. He did the whole action of it, but again, I was there with him, and we both got told like that is a no. You can't do that. You can't, like, that is insensitive, and like that is something that is very to play around with. That is not something to take lightly. This is very important. And again, even at like 7 years old or something, around 7 years old, I didn't fully comprehend what was happening. But I was like, but it was in that moment where it felt like, oh, it felt important then, and it's still important now. And I kind of got in trouble for just pretending about it. And even ever since then, I remember anytime it was talked about, I was always like, oh, I don't want to, it's a sensitive subject. And it's, so that's
are we safer? Are we safer from 9/11, from terrorist attacks? And there was a poll.
That's what I was curious about.
2003, 67% of America said that we are safer. 27% we are less safe. 2011, 64 and 25.
Wow.
2021, 49% people feel we're safer, and 41% we're less safe.
Wow.
So it's as time goes on,
those
numbers are you're getting a split in the population.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's some
it's
people,
almost 50-50.
Some people want the nanny state. I mean, let's be honest. There is a segment of the population, and it makes up a sizable amount, that want the government to kind of be the role of a nanny. I mean, it just does. And so I think that's where you're starting to see those numbers, right, where you got half are like, yeah, I want the government to kind of take care of me. And then the other half is, no, I don't need the government to take care of me. I can take care of myself. Mm-hmm. I need you to worry about just some kind of basic general things and leave the other stuff to me. So, I'll be very interested as time goes on how 9/11 will kind of stay in the memory of people, because you think of all the great momentous things that have happened in United States history.
Think about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah,
that's still something. Remember Pearl Harbor. Remember
that was the last
Harbor.
time we were actually attacked. But and as far as a military type of assault,
right,
on the sovereignty of the United States, but I'm just wondering, how long will it? 100 years from now,
right?
Will it have it? Will those generations think of it in the way we do? They probably won't.
I think of it in the aspect of what you just said about Pearl Harbor. That happened before I was born, and so it was always taught in history, and it was always kind of held in some sort of regard. But like, I never lived through it, I never experienced it, so it was always told to me in stories. There are there are younger siblings of friends that were born after 2001 and are now, give or take 20-something years old now. And again, 9/11 was only ever talked about in like a classroom,
right, in a history book, right.
Oh, that happened when I was born, or that happened before I was born. And it's like, oh yeah, I was 7, so it's like, I think that kind of, once time goes along, where like a
new generation comes along, and it becomes less.
I don't think it holds the same weight, because again, like I said, I was at a time where memories were forming for me, and I got in trouble for playing lightly with so I got very firsthand experience of like, that is a sensitive subject.
You got something that's going to make it stick into your head,
right?
Like what you're saying is, kids born after that aren't going to have that stuck in there, just like the people around Pearl Harbor time, especially the people in Hawaii and in America. That's what brought America into the war. That's what pushed us into that, because we realized this is our country and they just attacked us.
Yeah.
So I think I'm like Jason. I think it'll be there until another event happens.
Yeah.
And these numbers obviously kind of go, and you're going, but now I see us moving toward more of a dystopian type government, a dictatorship type government, and they're trying to change history and what we're being taught and how we're being taught and the news that we get. And I think that those things are going to start changing for the benefit of this dictatorship style government.
You're starting to see it with you once again. What are they talking about right now? The return of COVID.
I was just going to say that as well. I feel like the same
mask
thing.
And
but they say by Thanksgiving we'll be back to
lockdown.
Mask, and then by the end of the year, the beginning of the year, we'll be in a complete COVID lockdown situation. And then Biden just went to Congress and asked for a lot of money for a new vaccine. That what he tried to put in there for this money was that it was also a mandatory vaccine that every American must take, and that he was trying to get that written into the law of money. And that's totally dystopian and dictatorship and the government and a bunch of sheep.
What I was gonna the route that I was gonna take when referring to the whole COVID thing was like there are kids out there that were going through like the whole pandemic started in like 2020 and it lasted for something like 2 years is what it felt like before things could get back to what seems like normal now, and like there were kids that were going through like middle school and high school during that time that like that had a very different school upbringing than everyone else before them and after them. And so it's like, it's crazy to think that that's the same thing for them. Is like, that was living through that was a hard time on a lot of factors, because of all the pressure from every different angle. And so the same thing is any kid that was either born during 2020 or after 2020, I think would probably look back on that as like some sort of like, that was just something that happened, to us. And of course, everyone else that like was potentially going through elementary school or middle or high school that like, or even jobs, people losing their jobs or family members. It was a hard time for people that like, that's going to stick with them, or that's going to be like a milestone in history of like, remember that was hard. And I think people that come after that won't carry the same weight.
I worry about this what's coming with this COVID. And look, and I don't want to, I'm a bit mixed on the COVID thing because I have had relatives and friends that were severely affected by COVID.
Yeah.
Some have passed. But at the same time, I mean, I want to be sensitive to that regard.
Right.
But at the same time, it looks like this is something that's going to be with us now for good. It appears that these latest variant that seems to be kind of circulating around, most of the people I've heard that have come down with it is generally mild symptoms. A few people I've heard have had a little bit more. But I often wonder, to me, this was a test. I think,
I've said this many times. I believe this was the largest social experiment ever produced in the world.
So my question is, though, I looked at how our society reacted to COVID. God forbid that an actual variant would come out with a 50% mortality rate across all age groups.
Yeah.
How that would affect society. And it scares me when I think about that because I saw just what this did and how it changed people.
You're right.
Fear is a powerful drug.
Yeah.
It'd be surprised at what people will do when they become afraid.
Yeah.
I mean, you talking about people that well-adjusted, normal people that you've interacted with your entire life that you think are a certain way, and all of a sudden fear sets in, and how quickly people turn on one another. They do.
I think it's the media, and I think it's the government. In 1918, the Spanish flu killed 50 million of a world population of 950 million estimated, which is 5.26% of the world population. And the experts called this a tragic event. In 2018, seasonal flu killed 650,000 people in the world of a world population of 7.5 billion. Obviously, that's just an estimate.
Yeah.
Of a 0.009% of the world population died. Experts called this a typical year. In 2020, COVID-19 killed 488,000 of a world population, which is a 0.006%. And the world is coming to an end, shut it down, close all businesses, close the churches, and runs the world economy. But technically, of that 480,000, how many of them actually died from COVID?
Yeah.
Because there was only 35 cases of the flu the same year.
Where did the flu go?
Yeah, where did the flu go? How many people died, and the doctors and the hospitals were being paid to call it COVID? But I had a friend who died in a car accident who was declared dead from COVID.
I think if I'm not mistaken,
if you had COVID in your system when you died, no matter how you died, even if it was through electrocution, filling with
they associated it with COVID.
They called it a COVID death.
But the problem is, I think that was what was happening is, hospitals and places there was money involved with how
Lots
many
of money. $16,000 for every time you declared somebody COVID death.
A COVID death. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's that's what I'm saying. We're in uncharted territory. I never thought I would see the United States kind of devolve into this. I mean, I feel sorry for people that are going to be born into this kind of world that realize it wasn't like this before. It wasn't.
Right.
And it's just, there's always been disasters. There's always been, sickness and stuff like that. That's a given. That's just part of the human condition and living on this planet. Mm-hmm. But we're something is different. And I've said it before, something is different. It's I feel it. It's tangible. Mm-hmm. I can't necessarily put my finger on it, but something is just not right. Something has changed, and I don't know if we're going back. I really don't. If anything, it's just we're gonna be kind of going down this just dark abyss. So I'll tell you just a perfect example of this. I've got a friend of mine, and he's an older gentleman, but this is where I'm talking about fear. Mm-hmm. I saw him the other day walk into the grocery store with a full breathing apparatus on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man.
I mean, you would think he was going into the tear gas chamber.
Right.
I looked at him, I'm like, and he literally stays locked up in his house.
Right.
And I'm sitting there going, I feel sorry for you. That you have allowed fear to absolutely rule your life. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. I can understand if this thing was something that, was really knocking people down.
Right.
But the vast majority of people, I said, not to say that there are some people that really derive very bad symptoms and struggle with this. Yeah. No doubt about it. But the vast majority of these cases are minor. Mm-hmm. Or just minor, cold-like, flu-like symptoms. You get over it after a while and you move on. But that's what I'm saying. Fear.
I had an interesting discussion with a mentor of mine a long time ago. And he was talking about how, you really don't know, how you'll act underneath severe conditions until, you really put yourself, or you really get into those moments. The hypothetical scenario he was talking about was what if you were stranded on an island, or you were struggling to survive, He's like, there is a moment when you are deprived of certain like core needs, like how your primal instinct will probably come out at a certain point, that you don't know how you'll fully act when like you are in like a life-threatening scenario potentially. He's like, you here in your conscious mind, you can have a pretty good understanding, but sometimes at that there's a point where like you won't ever really know how you'll act until you were probably faced with, you know, a life or death scenario.
Well, look how people reacted when they didn't have their toilet paper or their personalized plastic water bottle when COVID came out. People lost their freaking minds.
Right.
You know, they were going to have to use a wet washcloth to wipe their ass and actually drink tap water. Oh, my God, the world's coming to an end.
Yeah, considering we used to drink it out of the hose pipe.
Yeah.
As a kid. I mean, you know.
I mean, people literally lost their mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's we have. I'm telling you, it's. I don't know. I mean, as I said, I think we're in a different realm now. I don't see the genie being stuffed back in the bottle. If anything, it seems to be there's going to be there's always going to be a disaster on the horizon that they're going to get people all scared of, and people are going to do what they're going to do. And just like you said, you're talking about how you never know how you're going to react to a given stimuli.
I'm kind of in that mess right now.
You know,
Sorry,
but the fact of the matter is, let's look what happened during Hurricane Katrina. Right. I mean, that was an apocalyptic, localized event.
Right. Right.
And I saw how people were reacting. Now you just magnify that over a larger area, how people would turn into animals. You know, what they say, most people are 2 paychecks away from poverty, from not having food.
Or a $700 car bill from bankruptcy.
Yeah.
I mean, for the vast majority of people, I mean, their check engine light comes on. That's a major deal. How am I going to pay for this?
Mallory and I were having a discussion over dinner a few nights ago about how it's crazy. It all played into the same thing you were talking about how like things feel different. Is her and I are in our 20s, and it's crazy to think that like at a certain point in time, my parents and my grandparents at our age were able to not only own a house, but have multiple kids. And I know that there are people in my age bracket that are doing that now, but like, I feel like right now, if I was to try and have a kid or multiple kids and also try to own my own home, like I feel like I wouldn't be able to, either I am going to be without or I am not going to be able to provide well enough for my child. And I know everyone keeps telling me, you'll always find a way. And I'm like, that's not the point. The point's not finding a way. The point is I'm trying to be realistic with myself about I would like the best for the child if I was to have a child. I would like to own my own home. And I feel like whenever I'm really realistic with myself, right now I feel like I don't, and I make a pretty good amount of money. But it's like it feels like such a different world than even when my parents were my age. My dad was making a little bit more than I was, and he was able to have multiple kids in a house, and and eventually end up upgrading to another house, and it's like into a bigger house one day. And it's like I'm looking at. I mean, obviously, I know that the housing bubble right now is in a crazy time. But thinking about it.
Ian,
right.
that you make a very good point. I would venture to say that I look back on growing up and the kind of house I grew up in.
Right.
I do believe people want. I think there's this idea that there are a lot of people like they somehow I need to have this.
Yeah.
And that this is a lot higher up the ladder.
Yeah.
Than what I think is realistic.
You're right.
So what happens, all your friends that say, well, they can have multiple kids and they can own a home, I guarantee you they're in a lot of debt. So you got to make a choice.
Right.
Can you live with yourself in that sort of debt, which they are, okay?
Right.
Unless they're just making exorbitant amount of money.
Which I don't really think so.
It's unless they're making they're making a lot of money. And I'm not saying there's a lot of people that do.
Right.
But when I look at people that live in some of the houses they live in, 2 cars that I know are close to $80,000 a piece.
Yeah.
Kids in private school.
And that's what I'm talking about.
And I'm sitting there going,
yeah,
they're living on the margins.
Right.
They are.
For me, like I try to be, I feel like I do a pretty good job of riding the line between like splurging on myself and making sure I have a nice stuff. But then also being realistic and not trying to live beyond my means. I think that's the problem that I'm running into here is like whenever, and the thing is, all of what I'm saying, Mallory, my fiance, backs me up with this as well about how making ends meet shouldn't be the standard of like if you're gonna have a child, we would like to be able to afford a child, to be able to provide for the child and not put ourselves at a detriment to try and provide, because that doesn't feel like that should be how that situation works. And like I said, that's not the point I'm getting into. The whole thing was, and the thing that sparked this conversation was that one of, or I guess it's Mallory's manager, she purchased a house for $150,000 a handful of years ago and was able to sell it for $300,000. And it's not, and she did like a little bit of, renovations to it, but it's like, it's that kind of situation. Like even just like a handful of years later, the house that she had, because of the land or because of the crisis that we're in or whatever, the house is double the amount now,
right?
For something that is like that. And so that's the reality I'm living into right now of like, there was a point in time where my grandparents could,
I would venture to say, if you probably look at your grandparents' home, it was probably very small.
Right.
And people were willing to live like that. And I just think today, there are a lot of young people that don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
They just don't. They kind of look at their parents and see, well, I want that now. And unfortunately, they don't realize the struggle that their parents went through to get to that point.
I hear you, but I think also like those houses that my grandparents were in are also costing a fortune right now as well. Is what I'm trying to say.
Everything's expensive.
And so that's what I'm saying.
Everything's
like,
expensive now.
Even if I was to live, even if I was to have a child and live in a modest home, I still feel like I would be questioning if I'm able to live comfortably.
What are you willing to sacrifice?
And that's what I'm saying. And at that point, I feel like I feel like I shouldn't have to ask that question of what should I sacrifice to live, as far as like, am I going to be taken care of, or is my child going to be taken care of, or are we going to have a home over our head? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like those things are all very essential things that I feel like I'm asking some pretty hard questions on.
Well, you have to put pen to paper.
I know.
I'm sure you have.
Right, yeah, that's the problem.
To see exactly what it's going to take.
How much it would take for me to own a house that is not living beyond my means, and to comfortably live, potentially raising a child. I was like, that is a lot of money.
Well, they say right now in the late, what is this, 2023, 2020 area, it cost a total of $250,000 to have a kid over the years. It's actually to have a kid now. If everything is perfect, the hospital stay is easy, there's nothing to it, it's $16,000 to $22,000 to have a kid. Back in 1950, it cost $165 to have a kid.
Even adjusted for inflation.
In 1960, it cost just over $200. In 1963, it cost $46.30 to have a kid. The delivery room service only carried a $15 price tag and anesthesia was a meager $2. In 1990, the first year alone could cost mom and dad $4,333 less than when they made less than $29,000 a year. If they made over 48, it could cost $8,770.
So what's the equivalent?
If you were to have $100 in 1950, that's about $1,300 in today's money. So even still, 13,
that was before. Nothing. That was before we got off the gold standard.
You're right.
So,
you're right, yeah.
So money was a little bit more scarce,
right.
Back then than it is now. Yeah, I mean it is.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. The question comes in, I guess, and Ian, in the position that you're in, you and Mallory.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to sit down and say, okay, if this is something we want to do, this is what's. And are we willing to make the sacrifices to do that?
Yeah.
And if you're not, well, then. That's a decision you got to make. I mean,
we have again. I'm not going into all the details to bog down this episode with it. So trust me when I say I'm not. This isn't necessarily like a plea for help in this regard. I'm venting about the reality of the world we live in right now, where it's like we would like to have a 2-bedroom home that we could live comfortably in, that we could potentially have some children in one day. And the more we're looking at it, it's like, man, that's a little unrealistic right now, and it's like that's crazy to think about. And then again, and then when you add the idea of like, well, we would like to have a child maybe one day, and it's like, oh, that's also going to be, and I said that we have some plans in as far as like career paths, and it's gonna be okay. It's interesting to see how talking to my mom and talking to my parents, where it's like, oh yeah, it was just like not a big deal, and I'm like, it feels like a very, very big deal right now to start having these discussions.
It is a big deal.
Right.
The Department of Agriculture said 2 years ago that it costs $233,610 to raise a child to 18 years old. Adjusted for inflation, that figure is likely closer to $288,094.
That's unbelievable.
It's crazy. It's crazy when you have that
from
big.
Born to 18. Yeah. Now, that's not, think about that.
That's
to 18. That doesn't include college yet, does it?
Well, let's be honest. There's many kids now that are staying with parents longer and they're attached.
Well, because it feels the same way. At one point in time, like I said, I feel like I heard so many stories of like, of people's grandparents running off at 18 and, working their butt off, and then before you know it, they can make enough money to own a home.
Different era.
You're right, and that's what I'm saying. But that's the thing I'm talking about. It's
different
just
era.
A different. Even in the span of a couple generations, how drastically different it can feel.
Here's an interesting little graph. Thank God for this little pad, because right
now,
with
Stoney,
this
I am
accident,
so glad someone else is bringing the stats tonight.
Thank God I have a pad, because my brain, I'm struggling along here, but. Where does the money go? 18% for food, 29% for housing, 15% for transportation, 9% for health care, 6% for clothing, 16% for child care and education, and 7% is miscellaneous.
Wow. I feel like my graph is very different from that, but it's cool to see that, though.
I mean, I look...
here's an interesting one. Okay. Annual food costs by age. 0 to 2, $1,500. 3 to 5, $1,700. 6 to 8, $2,200.
Cool.
9 to 11 is almost $2,700. 12 to 14 is $2,800, and 15 to 17 is $2,800.
Wow. That's what I'm saying. There are a lot of, now, just like I said, there's a lot of children that are still kind of attached to their parents in some fashion a lot longer now. So the amount of money that's going out to kids, well, I can't say kids, grown people that are 30 years old. Right. Believe it or not.
Well, how many are moving back in with their parents at later ages? Nobody can afford. The parents can't afford to live. The kids can't afford to live. So how about we come and combine this income?
there are some groups that do that. I mean, like your like Asian communities kind of adopt that sort of. Yes. They kind of pool their resources together. and do that. It's just that's not an American Western thing. I mean, it's the Western thing is to kind of strike out on your own and establish your own homestead.
Well, you move as far away from your parents as you can because you don't want to be controlled by your parents anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of
in Europe, they don't travel that far from their parents.
No.
Driving is a privilege there. We consider it a right in America, so we want to go as far away from our parents as we can.
Yeah,
and that's part of the problem. That's what we've had this discussion, faith and family first. Yeah. Thank you, Chief Paul. Yeah. But when you start putting your family further away,
right,
you lose, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes, I remember my mom and dad lived down the road from my grandparents.
Yep.
I mean, a couple of houses down.
Same.
A couple of houses down.
I lived right.
I grew up, my mom and we lived in the same neighborhood as my grandma and grandpa.
But also that generation could have a one-income family, pay for a house, pay for all the schooling, pay for everything, even put their kids through college if they wanted to go on one income.
That was what we were talking about. The conversation we had elaborate on that. I was like, there was a point in time where my grandfather could work a full-time job, 40 hours, and my grandmother could stay home with the children, and that income could support the family for them, and they could live a comfortable life where they could also have a home to live in. Mm-hmm. It's like, and now I'm thinking like Mallory and I are both working full-time jobs, and we're like, it's going to be a little difficult. It's like, that's crazy to think about that. How it's just
you got to think about. I mean, as I said, it'd be very interesting to see how you and Mallory kind of figure all that out. And
right.
It's just it's going to be hard.
It is.
I mean, you're going to have to. Of course, if you have children, I mean, life radically changes. So I mean,
and hear me, anybody out there, we're not having kids anytime soon. We're going to get married first. But again, just the hypothetical, the discussion of it, it's like, man, it's crazy. Just even like 2 generations different feels like a very different world in a number of aspects. And raising a home and having a homestead is one of them.
Yeah. So. Well, I wish y'all the best.
Thank you. Well, is there anything else you guys want to hit on?
Yes, there is one more thing. I need to find it. So y'all continue on this
Gotta
conversation
vamp a little
for
bit.
just a second. I got something interesting here.
Yeah.
This is Louisiana.
Okay.
It's hot.
It is.
And Louisiana, I think it was LSU who came up with and genetically designed the love bugs.
Oh, God.
That were supposed to eat and kill the mosquitoes. And now all the love bugs do is, and they're called love bugs for a reason.
Yeah.
Because you always see them joined and, doing the nasty and tearing the paint off of your vehicle. Now, it has been that in Florida and California, they are releasing 2.4 billion genetically modified mosquitoes.
Uh-oh.
Why?
Because they're only male mosquitoes, and the babies that they're going to help procreate can only be male, so they're supposed to kill off the mosquito population.
It dwindles down the female population.
And it's supposed to help with disease spreading.
These kind of things kind of get me thinking about that movie. What was it? I Am Legend with Will Smith, and the whole point was they changed
the measles.
That was a cure. I think part in the beginning of the movie, there's like a newscast, and they've got this doctor on there, and the doctor said, "We have discovered a cure for cancer."
Yeah,
and they modified the measles.
Come to find out, it ended up having a terrible side effect. But
we're talking
that's what
about
I worry about, those kind of things.
Genetically modified, which is the same thing as the vaccine that we just didn't want to take. That was modified to change your genes and to do things. So what if the vaccine didn't work, and so now they're going to release a couple of billion mosquitoes to bite you and put it into your system that way?
God, that's so depressing.
And just for the record, I would like to say again that I am alive. I have no intention of changing that. I intend on living for a long time. I have everything to live forward to and look forward to a long, long, super life with Miranda and you guys here on the podcast.
Well, it's stunning that you say that you said that. I will say that our original topic for our podcast was actually something radically different than what we ended up talking about, but we've had a scheduling conflict.
Right.
That episode will be that topic, I should say, will be discussed at another date. So, but the idea of nanotech and tiny things being able to infiltrate you and stuff like that, and, I think that's probably more realistic than what we probably we're more comfortable talking about. But
scary stuff.
Yep. But good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but it was good. I enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Really did.
Nice little Labor Day weekend. Let me go ahead and
Yes.
say it correctly this time at the end of the episode. It was nice, a little laid back. I think we all need a little break sometimes. I think
Yeah,
this
it
is
was
kind of nice. It was it was nice to again. You don't have any papers this week.
I have no paper.
Right.
Well, I had a few, but nothing that
right.
was. I'm trying to get away from doing that, but I know there's going to be a couple episodes coming
Why?
up.
Don't get away from it. We love the statistics.
There's going to be a couple episodes that that might be something to mention.
You
some
and
topics.
Miranda are our statistic people.
Maybe,
There's
there's some topics that I think that are coming up. I think we have discussed or talked about maybe doing something on crypto and stuff like that. So I'm trying to get some research done on that because I'm completely ignorant on that topic.
Miranda and I talked to an interesting lady yesterday that I would like to bring on the show. She owns a consignment store, and that was really fascinating talking to her. Maybe we could invite her to come on.
Absolutely.
And talk to us. I think that was a really interesting conversation we had with her, and she's starting to listen to the podcast. She said she likes what we do, and maybe we can turn that into a show too.
The feedback we seem to be getting, people are liking the guests.
I talked to X-Men, and he said he had a fun time. And
That's great.
He said definitely whenever I finish, whenever I graduate, whenever he finishes, all his stuff, he's like, I would love to try and pop in and make a little. He'd like to be a regular guest.
Definitely, I would love to actually him to come on and talk about his schooling and everything that he done once he graduates. And anyways, for those of you trying to look for us or find us, we have a Facebook page /Retrospect Pod where you can give us some comments or reach out to us that way, or you can just type in Retrospect Pod on any of the major podcasting platforms and should be able to find us that way. But anyways, until next time, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye. Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
You're the best. Peace.